The invitation arrived on embossed cream cardstock, my sister's name printed in elegant serif font. Maranda Sumner cordially invites you to the launch of Fractured Narratives, a study in modern espionage fiction. Below it, in smaller text, a conversation with the author. No mention of family, no personal note. Just the formal invitation you'd send to any acquaintance on your publicity list. I held it up to the light in my Georgetown apartment, amused by the irony. My sister had written a book about espionage fiction, analyzing spy novels, deconstructing thriller narratives, dissecting the quote, unrealistic portrayal of intelligence work in popular culture. She'd spent 3 years researching it, interviewing novelists and film consultants, building her academic reputation on the foundation of made-up stories. I'd spent 20 years actually doing the work she wrote about. The difference was, nobody knew. I RSVP'd yes, of course I did. Maranda was my sister, and despite everything, I loved her. Plus, I'd learned long ago that the best cover was built on truth. I was the supportive younger sister. The quiet one, the one who showed up to family events, smiled in photos, and never drew attention to herself. It was perfect operational security, really. Nobody looks twice at the boring sister. Maranda and I had always existed in different orbits. She was the golden child, valedictorian, full ride to Yale, PhD in comparative literature by 28. Our parents, dinner parties revolved around her achievements, tenure-track position at Columbia, articles in prestigious journals, invitations to speak at conferences. I was the other one, the practical one, the one who did something with the government but could never quite explain what. Katie works in data analysis. My mother would tell people, her tone suggesting she was describing someone who filed paperwork in a basement. Very technical. Rather boring, honestly. I never corrected her. Data analysis was technically accurate. I did analyze data, vast amounts of it. Intercepted communications, satellite imagery, financial transaction patterns, social network maps. I built intelligence assessments that went to the National Security Council. I'd briefed 3 different CIA directors. I'd authored the current strategic intelligence methodology manual that every analyst in the agency used. But to my family, I pushed papers in some generic government building. It had started innocently enough. When I joined the CIA at 24, fresh out of Georgetown with degrees in international relations and Arabic, I'd been excited to tell my family. But the security briefing had been clear. Operational security wasn't optional. The less people knew about your work, the safer everyone was. So I'd been vague. Government work, intelligence community, mostly desk work. My father had patted my head. That's nice, dear. Not as flashy as your sister's academic work, but someone has to do the administrative jobs. I'd been running source networks in the Middle East at the time, coordinating with foreign intelligence services, tracking terrorist financing. But sure, administrative. After a while, I realized I enjoyed their assumptions. There was a delicious irony in sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, listening to Maranda hold forth about the realities of intelligence work based on interviews with fiction writers, while I mentally cataloged the 3 operational cables I needed to review before Monday morning. It became a game. How much could I hint at the truth without actually revealing it? How many double meanings could I layer into conversations? "How's work, Katie?" someone would ask. "Oh, same old. Spent last week in meetings, very bureaucratic." I wouldn't mention the meetings were in Langley's secure conference rooms, or that bureaucratic meant negotiating intelligence sharing protocols with Mossad. Maranda, bless her, took my vagueness as confirmation of her own superiority. She'd squeeze my shoulder affectionately at gatherings. "Katie's so patient with all that tedious government work." I could never do it. I need intellectual stimulation. I'd smile and sip my wine and think about the terrorism financing network I'd just helped dismantle, or the human intelligence operation I was coordinating, or the strategic assessment I'd written that morning about Russian cyber capabilities. The game kept me sane, it also kept me safe. The fewer people who knew what I really did, the smaller my threat profile. I'd seen what happened to analysts who got too public: targeted harassment, security threats, operational compromise. Anonymity was armor. But there was a cost. After 15 years of being underestimated, part of me started to believe it. Not intellectually. I knew my worth, knew my capabilities. But emotionally? There was a hollowness in being invisible, even when you'd chosen it. The book launch was at a trendy bookstore in Brooklyn, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. I arrived early, wearing the kind of outfit I'd perfected over the years, expensive enough to suggest competence, boring enough to be forgettable. Navy blazer, white blouse, simple jewelry. The uniform of a woman who blended into backgrounds. Miranda was already holding court near the front, surrounded by grad students and literary types. She'd dressed for the occasion: silk dress, statement earrings, hair styled in an artful updo. She looked like success personified. She spotted me and waved me over. "Katie, you made it!" I hugged her. "Wouldn't miss it!" "You look nice, very professional." The way she said it suggested professional was a synonym for bland. "Thanks, you look amazing." "Well, it's a special night," she turned to the group around her. "Everyone, this is my sister Katie. She does government stuff. Data analysis." Polite nods all around. One guy, pretentious glasses, tweed jacket despite the warm weather, asked, "What kind of data?" "The boring kind," I said with a self-deprecating smile. "Financial records, mostly. Compliance work." Not technically a lie, I did analyze financial records. Terror financing left digital footprints, and I was very good at following money trails. "Sounds tedious," Tweed Jacket said, already losing interest. "It pays the bills." Miranda squeezed my shoulder in that familiar gesture. "Katie's always been the practical one. I'm the dreamer, she's the doer. We balance each other out." I smiled and let myself fade into the background as the crowd grew. I found a spot near the back, accepted a glass of cheap wine, and settled in to watch my sister shine. The reading went well. Miranda was a natural performer, her voice carrying perfectly as she read excerpts about the mythology of the lone wolf spy and the fetishization of violence in espionage narratives. The crowd laughed at her jokes, nodded at her insights, and applauded enthusiastically. I clapped along, genuinely proud of her. The book was good, well-researched, thoughtfully argued, engagingly written. The fact that she was completely wrong about several fundamental aspects of intelligence work didn't diminish her achievement. Fiction and reality were different beasts. After the reading came the Q&A. People asked about her research process, her favorite spy novels, her thoughts on current TV shows. Miranda answered with practiced charm, name-dropping authors she'd interviewed and academic frameworks she'd applied. Then someone asked about real intelligence work. "Do you think fiction gets anything right about what actual spies do?" Miranda laughed. "Absolutely not. The reality is far more mundane. It's bureaucrats in offices, analysts staring at spreadsheets, case officers filling out endless paperwork. The CIA is basically a corporate office that occasionally deals with classified material." I took a long sip of wine. Not wrong, exactly. But like describing a symphony as people sitting in chairs making organized noises. "My sister works in intelligence," Miranda continued, warming to the topic. "Well adjacent to it. Data analysis. And trust me, there are no car chases, no shootouts, no dramatic confrontations. It's meetings and memos and mind-numbing detail work." More people turned to look at me. I raised my glass in acknowledgement, playing my part. "Must be quite different from your work," someone said to Miranda. "Oh, completely. Katie's job is necessary, obviously. Someone has to crunch the numbers. But it's not exactly intellectually stimulating. I need ideas, debate, theory. She's more mechanically minded." There it was, the subtle put-down, delivered with affectionate condescension. Mechanically minded. Like I was a particularly useful appliance. I smiled blandly and said nothing. The game continued. The event moved to a reception after the Q&A. Miranda signed books, posed for photos, and networked with the Brooklyn literary set. I made small talk with a few people, maintained my cover as the boring sister, and considered leaving early. Then I noticed him, 50s, well-dressed, standing near the biography section and watching Miranda with the focused attention of someone working. He wasn't browsing, he was observing. Journalist, I pegged immediately, probably researching a profile. I'd gotten good at reading people over the years, occupational necessity. He approached Miranda during a lull in the signing line. I drifted closer, curious. Miss Sumner? I'm Lawrence DeWitt, freelance journalist. I'm writing a piece for The New Yorker about academics working in the spy fiction space. Would you have time for a few questions? Miranda's eyes lit up. The New Yorker. That was major. Of course, I'd be delighted. He pulled out a notebook, old school, I noted with approval, and started with softball questions. Her background, her methodology, what drew her to this particular subject. Miranda answered smoothly, hitting all her talking points. Then he asked, does talent run in the family? Any other academics or writers in the Sumner clan? Miranda glanced at me and laughed. My sister? She's not really the intellectual type, more practical. She reached over and squeezed my shoulder affectionately. I felt something shift in my chest. Not hurt, I was long past that. But something else. A recognition that the game had an expiration date, and maybe we'd just hit it. Lawrence DeWitt was flipping through his notes, professional courtesy dictating he acknowledged the sister. And what do you do, Ms. Sumner? Katie Sumner? Right, your sister mentioned you work in intelligence? Adjacent to it, data analysis. He was still flipping pages, half listening. What kind of... He stopped, looked at his notes, looked up at me sharply. Wait, Katie Sumner? K.M. Sumner? Oh no. Sorry? I kept my face neutral, but my mind was racing. How did he have that name? Catherine Margaret Sumner? His voice had changed, professional interest sharpening into something else. Miranda frowned. What's going on? Lawrence looked between us, then back at his notes. You wrote the Strategic Intelligence Manual for the CIA. The bookstore seemed to get very quiet. I'm sorry? Miranda's voice was uncertain. Lawrence was reading from his notes now. K.M. Sumner. I've been researching current CIA methodology for background. Your sister authored the definitive text on strategic intelligence analysis. It's required reading for every analyst at Langley. She's considered one of the foremost experts on... He looked up at me. You're that K.M. Sumner? I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Operational security had just shattered against the rock of public record. Miranda's face was cycling through emotions, confusion, disbelief, something that might have been anger. That's impossible. Katie does data entry, financial compliance. I do data analysis, I corrected quietly. I never said compliance. Lawrence was pulling up something on his phone now. Here. CIA website. Well, the public-facing one. List of unclassified publications. Strategic Intelligence Analysis, Methodology and Application, by K.M. Sumner, Senior Intelligence Officer. He showed Miranda the screen. She stared at it, then at me. Senior Intelligence Officer? It's a grade level, like tenure track, but with better security clearances. You wrote a manual, for the CIA. Her voice was flat. Several, actually. That's just the one that got publicly listed because we adapted it for the National Intelligence University curriculum. The National Intelligence, she couldn't seem to finish sentences. How long? 20 years. I joined right out of Georgetown. But you told us. I told you I did data analysis in the intelligence community. All true. I just didn't specify what kind of data or what level of analysis. Miranda's face was red now. You let us think. You assumed. I didn't correct you. There's a difference. Lawrence was watching us like a tennis match, professional instincts clearly warring with basic human decency. Should I give you two a moment? No, Miranda said sharply. Stay? Apparently my sister is full of surprises. She turned back to me. What else? What else have you been lying about? I haven't lied. I've maintained operational security, which is literally part of my job. For 20 years? Yes. She gestured helplessly. I wrote a book about intelligence work. You sat there through my research phase, listening to me interview novelists and consultants, and you never once mentioned that you actually do this for a living? Your book is about fiction. My work is classified, different domains. Don't patronize me, her voice was rising. People were starting to stare. You let me look like an idiot. You let me explain how intelligence work really works when I actually know? I kept my voice level. Yes, I did. Why? It was a reasonable question. I considered how much truth to offer. Because it was easier than explaining that I briefed the National Security Council on terrorist threats. Because the moment I told you what I really did, you'd have 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Because operational security isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement that keeps people alive. And because, I paused, because you never asked. Not really. You heard government data work and decided I was boring, and that worked for both of us. That's not fair, isn't it? How many times did you introduce me as the practical one, or say I wasn't, intellectually stimulating? You built your entire self-image on being the smart sister, the accomplished one. Where did that leave me? Either I corrected you and destroyed your narrative, or I played along and maintained my cover. I chose my cover. Miranda's eyes were wet. So what, this was all some kind of joke to you? Some spy game? No, it was survival. Do you have any idea what it's like to be constantly underestimated? To have your mother tell party guests that you file paperwork when you're actually coordinating operations across 3 continents? To watch your sister write a book about your profession while treating you like an idiot? I never. You did, constantly, affectionately, but constantly. The shoulder squeeze, the gentle condescension, poor Katie, so patient with her tedious work. She flinched. Lawrence cleared his throat. Maybe I should definitely go. No, I was done hiding. Stay, you wanted to know if talent runs in the family? It does. It just looks different than academic publications and book launches. My talent is understanding patterns in chaos, predicting threats before they materialize, building frameworks that help other analysts do their jobs better. I've been doing it for 2 decades, and I'm very good at it. If you're so accomplished, why hide it? Miranda's voice was sharp. Because I didn't need to perform it. You need audiences, validation, recognition. I needed results, different priorities. That's not, you're twisting this. Am I? I looked at her steadily. Tell me honestly, if I told you on day 1 what I really did, would you have believed me? Or would you have found ways to diminish it, to convince yourself that your work was more important, more intellectual, more worthy? She opened her mouth, closed it. We both knew the answer. Lawrence was writing frantically in his notebook now, journalist instincts overriding social grace. Ms. Sumner, the older Ms. Sumner, can I quote you? This is fascinating context for the profile. Don't you dare, Miranda snapped. Actually, I said, surprising myself, go ahead. Not about classified work, obviously, but about the manual, the teaching position at the National Intelligence University, the public-facing aspects of the job. It's all unclassified. Might as well own it. Miranda stared at me. You can't be serious. Why not? You built your career on being public. I built mine on being invisible. Maybe it's time I stopped hiding. This is my book launch. My night. I know, and it's a great book. I'm proud of you. But you asked why I never told you, and the answer is standing right here. Because every achievement I've had, you've found a way to make smaller. Not maliciously, but reflexively, because you needed to be the accomplished one. Her face crumpled. That's not true. Miranda, I softened my voice. You're brilliant, you're talented, you've earned every bit of your success. But you couldn't let me be successful too, not in your eyes, because then where would that leave you? She was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I don't. I know, it's not conscious, but it's real. People were definitely watching now. The Brooklyn literary set loved nothing more than authentic drama. Someone was probably tweeting about it. Lawrence looked between us. Should I come back another time for that interview? Yes, Miranda whispered. No, I said. Do both interviews. Miranda can talk about her book and her research. I can talk about the public aspects of intelligence analysis. Could be an interesting contrast piece. Fiction versus reality. Academia versus practice. Katie, Miranda's voice broke. It's okay, I said, meaning it. It's time. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of playing small. I'm tired of the shoulder squeezes and the condescension and pretending I'm less than I am. I never meant. I know, but impact matters more than intent. The rest of the evening was a blur. Miranda disappeared to the bathroom to compose herself. I gave Lawrence a brief interview, carefully staying within unclassified bounds, about intelligence methodology and the role of strategic analysis. He was sharp enough to understand what I wasn't saying, professional enough not to push. When Miranda returned, red-eyed but composed, the crowd had mostly dispersed. Lawrence thanked us both and left, promising to send the piece before publication. We stood in the emptying bookstore, surrounded by copies of her book. I really am sorry, she said finally, for underestimating you, for assuming, for all of it. I know. Can you forgive me? I thought about that. 20 years of invisibility, 20 years of swallowed pride and hidden accomplishments, 20 years of being the boring sister. Ask me after you've read my manual, I said. It's unclassified, you can request it through official channels. Read it, understand what I actually do, then we'll talk. That's fair. We hugged, awkward and tentative, but genuine. As I left, I passed a display of her books. Fractured Narratives, a study in modern espionage fiction. I picked one up, flipped to the dedication page. For my family, who keeps me grounded in reality. I smiled and put it back. Reality, it turned out, was more complicated than any of us had assumed. The New Yorker piece ran 6 weeks later. It was good, balanced, thoughtful, and more generous to both of us than we probably deserved. Lawrence had titled it, Sisters in Spycraft, One Studies Fiction, One Lives Fact. Miranda called me after it published. I read your manual, she said without preamble. And? It's brilliant, genuinely brilliant. The section on pattern recognition in sparse data environments is, Katie, it's groundbreaking. Thank you. I'm sorry, for real this time. I'm sorry I never saw it. I'm sorry I never let you see it. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? I chose invisibility. I can't blame you for not seeing through a cover I deliberately maintained. She was quiet for a moment. Lawrence wants to do a follow-up. About siblings in high-pressure careers. Would you be interested? Only if you promise not to squeeze my shoulder and call me practical. She laughed, watery but real. Deal. I didn't stop working in intelligence. The game I'd been playing, the deliberate underestimation, turned out to be harder to quit than I'd expected. Anonymity had been comfortable, even when it hurt. But I stopped playing it with my family. I started explaining my work within the bounds of classification. I let my mother brag about me at dinner parties. I accepted my father's pride instead of deflecting it. And when Miranda introduced me at her next book event, a panel on intelligence in literature, she said, "This is my sister Katie. She's a senior intelligence officer at the CIA and one of the foremost experts on strategic analysis in the country. She's also brilliant, patient, and has tolerated my condescension for 20 years with more grace than I deserved." The audience laughed. I caught her eye and mouthed, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "I see you now." And for the first time in 20 years, I believed it. The thing about being systematically underestimated is that you can convince yourself you prefer it, that invisibility is power, that not needing recognition makes you stronger. But the truth is simpler and harder. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants their work to matter to the people who matter to them. And there's no operational security requirement that says you have to be invisible to the people who love you. I'd spent 20 years in the shadows, telling myself it was necessary. It was time to step into the light. Not for validation, not for recognition, but for myself. Because I deserved to be seen, and I'd finally learned how to let